So welcome back to this new module. So from this module onwards, we are going to build the weight converter application. So this will be the final version of the application that we are going to build in this entire module. So you can see it has this rounded card-like structure that has this white circular structure and has a heading weight converter. And you can see it has this, you can convert your weight from kilograms to pounds. So you need to enter the weight in kg. So if I enter here like a value 85 and press the enter key, then you can see it's going to display your weight in pounds is 187.39. So if I enter this value in a real world project, which is actually a Google one, so if I enter here 85 and then if I select here a pound, then you can see it's going to display the result, which is 187.393. Okay, and if I come back to the our version of the application, which is 85, and if I enter, then you can see we get the 187.39, and here we are getting the 187.39 as well. So the why we are not getting that third digit, because we have used here a JavaScript pre-built to fixed function, and after 20 seconds this entire value of the input type become empty, and also the result is also becomes invisible, means it's become empty. And also if I try to enter here any invalid input like a minus value, and if I press the enter key, then you can see it's going to display a message, please enter a valid number. And if I try to enter a 0 here, then you can see please enter a valid number. And if I try to enter here like any text and press the enter key, then you can say it's going to say please enter a valid number, and after some time it's going to actually change its state to the default one that you can see right now here. So we will also check all of these conditions. So the first step is we need to start with the HTML part of the project. Now in this lecture we're going to start with the HTML part of the weight converter application. So for that I have created the files inside the Visual Studio Code, which is for the linking of the CSS and also for the JavaScript, which I explained in many of my previous projects. So you must be pretty much familiar with all of these concepts, how to link the CSS file and also the script.js. So I have also launched the project inside my web browser and also launched the final version of the application that we want to build in this module. So the first step is we need to start with the placing of the HTML elements. So right now I'm going to start it here with the container, because everything you know pretty much very well. I'm going to place everything inside the container and gives them a card-like structure to the applications. Then instead of that, I'm going to use here a form tag. Instead of that, I'm going to leave the action as empty, because we are not actually using any backend database here. Alright, and also I'm going to use here h1 element, which is for the heading. So it is going to have the heading called weight converter. Alright, so you can see once I control save it, then you can see the heading is now visible to the browser. That is because whenever I press the Ctrl S key with the use of the live server extension, we immediately get the output to the browser. After that, we need to use here a paragraph element, and instead of that, I'm going to display these text. So I'm going to copy from here and I'm going to paste it here so that to save a little bit of the time. Now you can see we get the paragraph that we want, which is you can convert your weight from kilogram to pounds here. Also, we need to add here a label tag. So for the label here, we will be using weight converter. I'm going to use here a smaller one, weight converter. Okay, so this will be the weight converter, and then here we want to display the label that is kilograms. So this will be the label that we want to add. The label will be this one, which we are going to place it in the center once we are going to start with the CSS part of the project. After the label, we need to add here a input value. So it is like input tag, not input value, it is like input. So we need to here actually want a type of the input to text, and also we need here a step value. So here after that I'm going to specify here a step, and I want to here display a 5. Okay, and we actually don't want any ID and also the name, so I'm going to remove all of these two properties. And after that, here I will be adding a placeholder text, which is enter your weight, that is this one, in kgs. So this will be the placeholder text that I want to display inside my input type. And after that, we need another paragraph element that will be used to display the result. So it is like our your weight in pounds is, and then we want a span element instead of that, in which we are going to display the value, and it should have an ID which is like convert weight. So this will be the ID for the span element, which is convert weight, or you can say that the converted weight, because once it is converted, then we want to display it. So also we need to close this particular span tag, and here we just need to close this span tag, that is this one, and it's actually giving here a problem. So actually here paragraph is also closed. Alright, so that marks the completion of the code for the HTML part. We have placed all the elements that are required for building the weight converter application. So in the next part, we are going to start with the CSS of the project. So now it's time to start with the CSS part of the project, which is the weight converter application. So for that, we need to use the style.css file. Inside of that, first I'm going to select the universal selector, and here I'm going to select the box size into border box, and also I'm going to reset the margin to 0 and then padding to 0 as well. Once I did that, then you can see the default style of the browser is actually reset. Then I'm going to select the body element. Instead of that, first I need to set the display to flex. So here we need to use a display which is going to be flex, and after that I will be using the align items to the center. Then we need a justify content, which is also going to be the center of the screen. Right, then you can see the things inside the browser have been changed. Then I'm going to specify the min height, which is going to be like 100 VH. If I control save it, now you can see the content is actually shifted to the center of the browser screen. Then the last thing I want is from margin from all sides is going to be 0, and then I'm going to here use the text align property to the center. So here we have actually set the margin to the universal selector, so there is no need to set the margin 0 to the body element. Okay, and after that I'm going to here use the background. So background, we will be using here a background color, not a linear gradient one. We are going to use the background color, and here I will be using F9, F4 and then F8. So this will be the color that we are going to use for this entire project. So after completing the code for the body element, now it's time to select the container, and instead of that we need to start its code. So the first thing is, again, we need a background color, and here we want a pure white color. So I'm going to specify this 6 times white. That is this one. If I control save it, now you can see the container has a white background color. And after that we need to specify the border radius. So the border radius we want is 50%. If I control save it, now you can see we get this spherical rounded container. And then we need to specify the padding, which is going to be 5 frame units, which is actually going to increase the padding of the container. And after that we need to apply the box shadow property, that is box shadow, not box sizing, which is 0 pixel, 4 pixel, and then we need to display here a 10 pixel. And after that we need to use the RGBA 0, 0, 0, and the alpha is going to 0.1. If I control save it, now you can see we get this box shadow to the project. Alright, and after that we need to specify the max width. So max width we want is 400 pixel. You can see now we get this circular structure a little bit, not exact circle, but at least we are getting something like close to the circle. And after that we need to specify the width also, which is going to like 100%. Or you can just simply, if you want, you can just simply avoid the max width, which will give you this kind of effect if you want a spherical one. And if you want a max width, you apply the max width, then you can get it. So you can just simply comment out width one. So if you want a spherical structure of your project, then you can use the width 100%, just remove the max width. So I want a max width version. That is the reason I'm actually showing you all those two properties. And after that we need to set the code for the form element. So here I will be selecting the form tag, means the form element, and here first I'm going to specify the margin. Top is going to like 1 rem unit. Alright, after that we need to here select the h1 element. So inside of the h1 element, font size, I'm going to change the font size to actually 24 pixel, and then I'm going to select the margin bottom to actually 10 pixel, and after that I'm going to set the color. So here I will be using a green color, so here it is like to ECC71. Control save it. Now you can see the h1 element is actually changed and its color is actually changed, and also the font size and margin bottom properties applied to the h1 element. After that, I'm going to select the paragraph element. Inside of the paragraph element, first we need to change the font size. So font size is going to be like 16 pixel. Okay, and then we need to add the color. So it is like a color because right now we are actually using a font. So that is the reason we are going to use the color property, which is 6C757D. By control save it, we get a color very close to the gray. Okay, so this will be the code for the paragraph element. And then it's time to select the label element. Inside of the label, first we need to apply the width to 100%. Right, and then we need to apply the padding. So padding is going to like 10 pixel, and then we need to apply the font size, which is 16 pixel, and then we need to apply the border, that is this one border, and it is going to like 1 pixel solid border, and then we need to apply the color, which is D1 D1 D1. Control save it. We get this kind of effect for the label. Okay, and I can simply remove the border because for the label we don't need a border, because right now we get this square like structure, so we actually don't want it. So I'm going to remove it, and we also need to actually remove the width property because that is not required, because we have already specified the max width to the container, so that is the reason it is not required, right? And the thing that here I want to add is actually a display property. So display is going to be like block, and after that I need here a color property because we want to display a label in the little dark version. So that is the reason I have applied here a color property. Okay, so that's it for the label code. Now it's time to start with the input element. So inside of the input element, we need to actually change the width to 100%, and I can simply remove the width because I have already applied the width to the container, which is the max width property. So that is the reason I don't need to use it here. I'm actually repeating it multiple times because when I'm developing the application, I didn't apply the width, or I can say that the max width to the container. Instead, I apply them separately in all of the HTML elements. That is the reason I'm actually doing this way. Means every time whenever I type the code, I immediately get the width 100%. So the first property that we want to apply inside the input element is actually the padding. So we want a padding of 10 pixel, and then we need to apply the font size, which is going to be 16 pixel, and then the border property that we want is actually a 1 pixel border, which is solid border. Then we need a color, which is D1 D1 D1. You can see now the input type is actually changed. Then we need to define the border radius. So the border radius I want is actually a 20 pixel. You can see it gives us a capsule like structure to the input type. And after that, we need to add here a transition. So transition, we need to add the transition to the border color. So it is a border color, and we want a 0.3 s, which is the time duration, and then we need to use the ease in out transition. You can see there is a transition between the border. Okay, so that is for the input time. Then we need to add the code for the input focus. So here we need to grab the input, and here we need to use the colon, then the focus one. So here first we need to use the outline to none, and then we need to add the border color. So border color is going to be like this one, which is 3498 dB. Control save it. Now if our border is active, it's going to display a blue color with a proper smooth transition of the ease in out. Okay, so you can see now we have successfully styled the project, which is almost looks like the final version of the application. You can see here, this is the version of the application that we want to develop, and this will be the final version of the application. So weight in pounds. So this will be the paragraph element that we want to actually style, that is this one. So right now you can see, if I come back to the version of the application, so this is actually a paragraph element. So if I apply a margin top property, right now this note looks great. Then you can see there is a space between these input type and the paragraph element. Okay, so you can see the our application will almost looks like the final version of the application. So now the only thing is left, once we display the data, means for the result one we want to style the result element. So which is actually our span element, that is this convert weight. So I'm going to copy this particular ID and come back to the style.css again. So it is an ID selector, so we need to use the hash symbol and then we need to paste the name of the selector, which is converted weight. And instead of that, I'm going to specify the font size property. So font size we want to display 20 pixel, and then we need to add the font weight also. So it is like font weight, which we want to display the bold, and then we need to add the color. So color we want is actually a red one, which is E74C3C. So we want to here use a hash symbol instead of @. I control save. No, we don't want a green one, we want a red version of the color. And after that we need to here add the display to inline block, that is this one. If I control save it, you will see nothing, but if I add some content inside of this span element, then you will see the final thing here. But actually we want to display in the separate line, so that is the reason we need to remove it from here. Okay, so your weight in pound is this. So now the styling of the entire project is actually done. So in the next part, we're going to start with the JavaScript part of the project. So now it's time to start with the JavaScript part for the project. So for that, we need to use the script.js file. Now instead of that, first we need to get the reference to the form element. So here I will be using the const form, in which I am going to initialize it with the document.query selector. So we need to specify the type of the selector. So it is actually a form selector. So here we need to specify the name of the form tag. So now we have initialized the form to this particular const variable, and after that we need to set the listener to this form element. So we will use here add event listener, and instead of that I'm going to listen to the submit event, and here we need to call the function. So this will be the function, and then we need to define its event. Instead of that we need to start its body of the function, and here first we need to use the e.prevent default, which is actually used to prevent the page from being refreshed, because we are actually using the form element and it has a submit button. So whenever we click on submit, it is going to refresh the page. To avoid the refreshing of the page, we need to actually use this particular code. Okay, and after that we will be here using the initialization of the variable. So first we need to initialize with the input element. So here we need to use the const input, and it is actually going to equal to document dot, and we actually going to use the query selector because we want to select a single input. So here we want to specify the input element, and after that we also need to display a converted weight selector, which is actually a span element. So here we want to again use the input type, which is going to document dot query selector, and inside of that we want to specify the span tag, that is this one. Okay, and you can see it is actually giving the error because the variable name is same. So here we need to use the converted weight. Okay, converted weight, and after that we need to create the variable that we want to use for the holding of the weight value. So here we are going to use the let, which is kg to pound. So this will be the variable name, and we are going to initialize it to 0, or I can just simply leave it as empty. Okay, so this will be used for actually to hold the converted value. Alright, and after that we need to check for the errors. So the first we need to check for the not a number value. So by using the isNaN function, we want to check the value of the input. So input, that is this particular variable, this is the input. So we are going to check it for value of the input. So if it is not a number, then we want to display an error. Alongside, we also want to check for the value which is smaller than or equal to 0. So here we are again going to add a input dot value. So if it is smaller than or equal to 0, then we want to execute this particular if block. So we want to display a converted weight, which is a variable. So we are going to add a class list, not class name. We are going to add here a class list dot add, and we want to add a error class to this particular converted weight element. And after that, we want to display the converted weight dot. We are going to update its inner HTML to actually a paragraph element. So first I'm going to add here a paragraph element, that is this one, and here also we need to add the paragraph element, and we need to wrap these two things inside the double quotes. Alright, and here we are going to display the message, please enter a valid number. Okay, so this will be the error that will be displayed inside of this converted weight span element under the paragraph element. Alright, and after that, once we display the error, we want to remove the error element, means this particular class, that is the error class that we have added dynamically by using the JavaScript code. So we want to remove that particular class also. So for that, we need to call here a set timeout function. Inside of that, we need to pass an arrow function. So arrow function, then we need to start its block of the body. And here, after specifying the comma, we need to pass a 2500 value, which is almost equal to 2.5 seconds. And instead of that, we need to again use the converted weight dot inner HTML. So we need to set the inner HTML of the converted weight element to empty one. And after that, again we need to call the converted weight, means once we update the UI part, we also need to update its CSS as well. So class list, and with the use of the remove, we want to remove the error class. Okay, so if I control save it, then if I enter here any negative value and press the enter key, then you can see we get the please enter a valid number, and after 2.5 seconds the span element will become empty again. Also, we want to empty this particular input value. So after the set timeout function, not inside of the error one, after the set timeout function, we want to call the input dot value to actually empty. So we need to make the input value empty. Now if I enter here again any non-numeric value, if I press enter, then you can see please enter a valid number, and after 2.5 seconds the application come back to its default state. So if it is not a number, if it is the number is not equal or smaller than 0, then we want to display the else condition, means we want to execute the else block of this particular code. So inside of the else block, the variable that we have created, which is kg to pound, we need to first initialize this variable kg to pound. This is going to be equal to here, so we are actually going to initialize it with the value of the input dot value, and we are going to multiply this particular value with a constant which is 2.20462. so this will be the constant value that is used to convert the weight from kgs to pounds. And since we are actually dealing with the numeric value, so we need to also make sure that we are actually dealing with the number. So I'm going to wrap this input dot value inside the number, so that for the extra bit of safety, because these calculation, which is the arithmetic calculation, are always performed with the numeric values. So that is the reason whatever we will get inside of this input dot value, we are going to convert it, means we are going to make sure that it is actually a number. So with the use of the number, we are actually getting the value in a form of number, and we are multiplying with this particular constant, which is actually a constant conversion factor, which is used for converting the weights from the kilograms, because the kilograms is actually a metric system and the pounds is actually a imperial system, means imperial system. If I pronunciate it properly, IMPERIAL, which is imperial system. So in order to convert it from metric system to imperial system, the approximate value that is used, that is this one, which is actually equal to 1 kilogram. So that is the reason whatever value we will get, we are going to multiply it with this particular value. So this particular value is actually equals to 1 kg. So if I enter here 1 kg, okay, so it is actually equals to 1 kg. This is an approximate value. It is not the exact calculated value. It is an approximate value. Also, after initializing the kg to pound variable, then we need to set this value to the span element. So here, what we are going to do, we are going to do converted weight dot class list. So again, we are going to use the same code. So I'm going to copy it from here and I will be pasting it here. And instead of adding a error class, we are going to add here a successful class. That is this one, successful. And then instead of using this one, because we also want to update the inner HTML, here I will be using the template string of the JavaScript, which is a tilde character present at the top of your tab key. So here I will be using the dollar, then the curly brackets, and inside of that we need to pass the variable value, which is kg to pound, not lg, it is like kg to pound. And then we need to use the toFixed function, which is a JavaScript function, and we need to pass it here 2. If you pass it here 3, then you will get the value, means 3 digit after the decimal point. And after doing this, we need to set the input type and also the converted weight element, which is a element used to display the data, which is actually a span element. We want to make it into empty as well. So for that, we need to call this entire code again here, means we want a same code, which is set timeout. Then we need to set the input value to none here. So input dot value to empty one. So we can call the input dot value here also, and we can call it after the set timeout function as well. So here we need to remove the successful class. That is this one, successful class, but we want to remove it after 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever you want. So for the quick working of the project, I want to actually remove it after 5 seconds. Okay, or I can just go with the 10 seconds. If I specify here 10,000, then it's actually almost equal to 10 seconds. So now the entire code for the weight converter is completed. So let me check whether we are successfully able to get the weight in pounds from kgs. So if I enter here 85 and if I press the enter key, then you can see we get the result 187.393. And after 10 seconds, this value will become empty, and also this input time, as you can see right here. If I enter here a different value, which is 45, which is approximately equal to 99.208. If I open the final version of the application, means the real version, and if I select here pound, and if I enter here 45, then you can see we get the 99.208 as a value. And here if I enter 45, which is our version of the application, we get the 99.208. So it is actually a real world application. Value it's actually shown is actually a real one. So it's actually matching the exact same value that is actually provided by this Google version of the application. So yeah, That marks the completion of this particular module. If you like this module, then leave your review, because your review motivates me to create more awesome content like this. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.